You were never meant to live a life without power. But they buried the key to it right in front of you, hidden under layers of myths, mistranslations, and fear. From the very start, something felt off, didn't it? A quiet knowing deep down that the world didn't work the way they said it did, that there was more to life than what met the eye. And guess what? You were right. What if everything you've been taught about reality is actually backwards? What if your thoughts didn't just influence your life, but created it? For centuries, this truth has been protected, distorted, and buried in plain sight, not because it wasn't real, but because it was too powerful. The ancient Egyptians understood it. The mystics practiced it. And at the center of it all was Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic, who encoded the laws of creation into texts few ever had the chance to read. But here you are now, and that means something. This video finds you at the right time. You're here because you're ready. You came into this world with a blank slate, open, intuitive, and connected. Before language, before beliefs, before conditioning, you could feel something deeper, a subtle pulse under the surface of ordinary life. But the moment you arrived, the programming started. They named you, defined you, and measured you. They taught you what to believe and what to fear. Not out of malice, but because they too were shaped by the same invisible forces. From your earliest memories, you were taught to look outward for truth, to find your identity in the mirror, and fulfillment in achievement. You were handed definitions of success, love, failure, and purpose, and told they were yours. But they never came from within you. Every system you passed through, from school to entertainment to religion, taught you to suppress what you felt and replace it with what you were told. Even your imagination was managed. Fantasy was reserved for fiction. Intuition was dismissed as immaturity. Ancient knowledge was labeled as superstition, something to outgrow. They gave you facts, but no wisdom data, but no meaning. You were taught to memorize answers instead of questioning assumptions. And perhaps the most dangerous lesson of all, they convinced you that reality was fixed, that your thoughts were fleeting, powerless, and meaningless. That the world was solid and you were separate from it. In that lie, they buried the key. Here's the truth: you are not observing reality, you are projecting it. And long before modern society built its factories and towers, ancient civilizations understood this. Thoth, scribe of the gods, keeper of divine order, didn't invent this knowledge, he remembered it. He preserved it, wrote it into the fabric of the emerald tablets and teachings that would become the foundation of Hermetic philosophy. Thoth left behind a system not of belief but of activation, not for people to follow blindly, but for those who were ready to decode it. Because what if manifestation isn't a trend, but a forgotten law, not magic, not manipulation, but alignment? What if your thoughts are more than just electrical signals? What if they're frequencies, transmissions into a living field that responds in kind? They never wanted you to know this. Because if you truly understood how powerful you are when you're aligned, you wouldn't be so easy to control. You wouldn't buy things to feel worthy. You wouldn't chase titles to feel seen. You wouldn't follow rules written by people who never once asked what your soul came here to do. You'd stop playing small. You'd stop obeying systems that feed off your doubt. You'd remember that reality bends to your mind, not the other way around. Some insights are too controversial to speak about publicly, so we've included them in our free newsletter, Insights Academy. When you sign up, you'll instantly receive a digital copy of the Kabbalion, but only for a limited time. Because what the Kabbalion hints at is exactly what Thoth encoded into every layer of existence, a matrix of symbols, cycles, and energetic blueprints that mirror the divine mind itself. As above, so below wasn't just poetry, it was a map, a cipher for those with eyes to see. But here's the thing: the map only reveals itself when you're in the right state. This isn't a secret that can be handed to you. It awakens when you're ready to become what it requires. That's why you can hear this information 100 times, read it in a dozen books, and still not feel the shift. Because it's not about what you know intellectually, it's about what you're tuned to vibrationally. Thoth's manifestation secret doesn't respond to ego. It doesn't care about your desire for more stuff, winning some game, or bypassing the work. It reveals itself when the signal of your inner world becomes clear, when your thoughts, emotions, actions, and awareness come into harmony. And right now, as you hear these words, something inside you might be stirring, a quiet remembering, a flicker of recognition. That's not a coincidence. That's resonance. The key isn't being given to you, it's being activated within you. The programming was never permanent. It was just layered. Layer by layer, thought by thought, you can peel it back. What remains beneath it is something divine. Before science gave names to atoms and equations, the ancients understood something deeper. Something that didn't need a microscope or a telescope to verify, because it could be known directly. They taught that the universe wasn't made of matter, it was made of mind. Not metaphorically, but literally. Everything you see, everything you touch, everything you believe is solid, is thought crystallized into form. This is the first Hermetic principle. All is mind. The universe is mental. Existence itself is consciousness in motion. The world doesn't exist outside of you. It emerges through you. Not in some vague spiritual sense, but in the most literal way imaginable. What you believe, feel, expect, and focus on becomes the filter through which all reality is shaped. Not as a lens, but as a generator. You're not just interpreting the field, you're emitting signals into it, and those signals are instructions. That's what Thoth knew. That's what he encoded into the ancient texts. Not rituals for worship, but codes for awakening. The emerald tablets weren't primitive poetry. They were encrypted maps for those who could read between the lines. When Thoth wrote that all is mind, the universe is mental, he wasn't speculating. He was declaring the foundation of reality, a foundation that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. For example, the observer effect in quantum physics shows that particles don't behave as solid objects until they're being observed. And what is observation if not directed awareness mind? But the system you live in wasn't built to support this truth. In fact, it's designed to bury it. You were taught to think of your mind as private, internal, isolated, a tool for surviving in an external world that's indifferent to your thoughts. But if all is mind, then your thoughts aren't private. They're generative. They ripple outward, imprinting the very field of your reality. That field listens not to what you say you want, but to what you vibrate with most consistently. You can't fake it. You can't manifest abundance while vibrating with scarcity. You can't create love while fearing loss. The field doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your frequency. And frequency isn't some new age fluff, it's the emotional tone you live in every single day. That's why the principle of mentalism is so foundational. Once you understand that thought creates form, everything changes. You stop asking how the world works, and you start asking how you work. Thoth didn't bring this knowledge to dominate or dazzle. He brought it because the human being was meant to be a creator, not a consumer. He knew we are fractals of the divine mind sparks of the infinite playing out as individuals, and that each of us has the same capacity to create worlds from within, but only if we remember. Mentalism isn't just a principle, it's a responsibility. If all is mind, then you are accountable for what you think, how you feel, and what you broadcast into the field. Not in a guilt-ridden, self-blaming way, but in a liberating way. It means you're not a victim of chaos. You're a participant in a cosmic feedback loop where your internal state shapes your external experience. This is where the secret begins to crystallize. Manifestation isn't about controlling the world. It's about mastering your own mind, your own energy, your own alignment. This is why Thoth's teachings were kept hidden, not because they were forbidden, but because most weren't ready. Power without understanding corrupts, and this kind of power, creative, energetic, spiritual, requires a level of consciousness that goes beyond desire. It demands self-awareness, integrity, and presence. That's why the teachings were veiled, passed through riddles, and protected by symbols. Not to make them unreachable, but to protect them from misuse. You might have heard the phrase, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But in this case, it's even deeper. When the frequency aligns, the truth reveals itself. That's what this moment is about. Not the beginning of your learning, but the beginning of your remembering. You've always had this power. You just mistook it for something outside of you, something to chase, something to earn. But Thoth didn't give us a ladder to climb. He gave us a mirror to look into. You don't need to become something new to access this truth. You need to shed what you were taught. You need to stop asking for proof and start listening to resonance. The mind isn't a container, it's a projector. And the moment you start using it with that awareness, your entire world begins to reconfigure. The question isn't, can I manifest? The question is, am I willing to become the version of myself that already does? Manifestation isn't about wishing harder. It isn't about chanting phrases into a mirror or writing down your desires 100 times hoping the universe will take notice. That's the surface-level teaching, the commercialized version of an ancient truth. But real manifestation, the kind Thoth encoded and the Hermetic masters preserved, isn't a spell. It's a state. You're not attracting what you want. You're attracting what you are. The energy you embody, the emotions you habitually feel, the beliefs you carry just below the surface. These are the ingredients of your frequency. And frequency is the language of the field, not your words, not your vision board. Frequency. The vibration you hold when no one's watching. The one you live in when you're not performing alignment, but actually existing in it. That's the trap so many fall into. They try to manifest with desperation. They say the affirmations but feel like frauds. They focus on abundance but act from scarcity. Then they wonder why it doesn't work. The truth is harsh, but it's liberating. The universe doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you broadcast. You can't outsmart the frequency you're tuned to. You can only shift it. And that's not about thinking new thoughts once or twice. It's about becoming someone else entirely, not by adding, but by remembering. Alignment means coherence. Coherence between your mind, body, emotions, and soul. When what you think matches what you feel, and what you feel matches what you do, and what you do is in service of what your spirit truly seeks, that's when the field responds. That's when manifestation ceases to be effort and becomes expression. The tree doesn't effort to grow. The sun doesn't force its light. And you, when you're in alignment, don't force your reality, you allow it to unfold. But alignment takes honesty, ruthless honesty. You have to stop pretending that your thoughts don't matter. You have to stop spiritualizing avoidance. You have to stop repeating what you've heard and start feeling what's true. There's no shortcut to this, no bypass. You can't slap positivity over pain and call it alignment. That's a performance. The universe doesn't respond to performance. It responds to presence. This is where the ancient wisdom of Thoth strikes like a bolt of lightning through the fog. His teachings weren't about gaining more. They were about becoming more. You're not here to manipulate reality into giving you what you want. You're here to align so deeply with your true nature that reality has no choice but to reflect it back. That's not magic, that's law. The same law that governs stars, cycles, breath, and time. The principle of correspondence. As within, so without isn't a metaphor. It's literal. When you stop chasing and start aligning, everything changes. Your goals dissolve into intentions. Your cravings transmute into clarity. Your life stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror. You'll stop asking, why isn't this happening for me? And start asking, what part of me is not yet aligned with what I claim to want? That's the real work. The uncomfortable, liberating, sacred work. Because manifestation isn't about doing more. It's about undoing what distorts your signal. It's not about trying harder. It's about clearing the interference, fear, doubt, shame, comparison. These are static. They block the signal. They clutter the channel. And you've been taught to ignore that, to suppress those frequencies, or worse, to judge yourself for having them. But the ancient teachings were clear. What you repress, you project. And what you don't heal, you manifest unconsciously. This is why many people get glimpses of manifestation, but never consistency. They manifest one thing, but not the next. They get the job, but not the peace, the money, but not the worthiness. That's because manifestation isn't about summoning stuff. It's about receiving reflection. The outer world is not a reward, it's feedback. That means if your life feels misaligned, it's not punishment, it's a mirror. One that's asking you to stop wishing and start calibrating. Here's the most humbling truth of all, you are always manifesting. You don't get to turn it off. You don't step in and out of the creative field. Every belief, every reaction, every emotion, every judgment, it all echoes into the field and forms patterns. The question isn't whether manifestation works. It's whether you're conscious of what you're manifesting right now. Alignment isn't a skill, it's a way of being. A devotion to coherence. A return to self-honesty so powerful that the universe begins to reflect the real you, not the masked one, not the people pleaser, not the wounded child trying to be enough, but the you that never stopped being divine. That's the manifestation Thoth spoke of, not magic, not manipulation, but memory. The remembrance of a truth so ancient it predates language. a truth that whispers, you don't need to force reality to bend to you. You need to return to who you are, and it will. There's a reason why some people say manifestation is a lie. Why they try the visualizations, say the affirmations, do the journaling, and nothing changes. And then there are others who seem to speak things into existence without effort. It looks like luck. It looks like unfairness. But it's not. It's alignment. It's readiness. And most of all, it's resonance. Thoth's teachings were never meant for everyone, not out of elitism, but out of truth. Just as you wouldn't give a child fire without first teaching them how not to burn, this knowledge was meant to be revealed when the student was capable of holding it without distortion. That's why the ancient world was full of initiations, not to gatekeep, but to protect, not to exclude, but to prepare. Power without awareness corrupts, and manifestation in its true form is nothing short of power, the ability to shape matter with mind, to collapse possibility into form through alignment alone. But here's where most people miss it. They treat manifestation like a transaction, as if the universe is a vending machine and intention is currency. I want this, so I'll focus on it. I'll visualize it. I'll repeat it. But beneath the surface, what's really being broadcast is lack, need, fear, attachment. They're not manifesting from wholeness. They're manifesting from the absence of it. And the field, being precise and indifferent, reflects that back without hesitation. That's why so many people say it doesn't work. Because what they're calling manifestation is actually manipulation. It's rooted in the ego's desperation, not the soul's knowing. The ego wants to acquire. The soul wants to express. And manifestation only responds to the latter. If your desire comes from a place of separation, if it's built on proving your worth, if it's masked in scarcity, then it doesn't matter how spiritual the language is, it won't align. Not because you're being punished, but because the field cannot be fooled. The secret is this: the universe isn't withholding from you. You're not blocked. You're not broken. You're just being asked to rise into the frequency of what you're asking for. The universe doesn't give you what you want. It meets you where you are. That's why Thoth's secret isn't some ritual or incantation or trick. It's a transformation. It's a rewiring of your inner world until your outer world has no choice but to match it. Most people aren't ready because they don't want to let go of who they've been. They want to manifest abundance but still identify with limitation. They want to call in love but still believe they're not enough. They want to change their life without changing their identity. But manifestation doesn't work like that. It requires death, the death of the false self, the persona, the performance, the programmed identity that was never really yours. That's the price. And for many, that price feels too high. But for those who are ready, truly ready, it's not even a question. It's a return. You're not failing to manifest. You're being invited into alignment. That resistance you feel, that frustration, that's the edge of your old frequency dissolving. The friction isn't failure, it's feedback. It's the echo of a self you're no longer meant to carry. And until you shed that version of you, the one built on shoulds and shame and survival, you'll continue to manifest more evidence of who you used to be, not who you truly are. Thoth's secret reveals itself only when the heart is open and the ego is quiet. That's why this teaching finds you only when you're ready, not ready to get something, but ready to become someone. Someone who remembers that the field doesn't speak words. It speaks vibration. And vibration is shaped by identity, not the one they gave you, but the one buried beneath all the noise, the one waiting to emerge. So if you've ever thought, why is it not working for me? Ask a different question. Ask, who am I being when I ask? Ask, do I believe I'm separate from what I seek, or am I ready to embody it now? Because the truth is brutal and beautiful. The field only mirrors who you are. And when who you are becomes coherent, clear, and aligned, everything shifts. This is the deeper path, the real path. The reason the secret isn't shouted from every rooftop, it doesn't want your intellect. It wants your surrender, not to something outside of you, but to what's always been inside. Manifestation, when it's real, doesn't feel like magic. It feels like home. You were never just surrounded by symbols. You were shaped by them, from the patterns on ancient temples to the spirals in your DNA. Reality itself has always spoken in geometry. Not art, not decoration, but language. A language older than words. Written not in ink, but in form. The ancients knew this. They didn't just build monuments, they encoded frequency into stone. Every angle, every curve, every repetition was a key, and the master architect behind so much of it, Thoth. To understand the deeper nature of manifestation, you have to go beyond affirmations and energy. You have to understand structure. Because the universe is not random, it is patterned. Every atom spins according to law. Every plant grows according to sequence. Every galaxy spirals according to rhythm. The Hermeticists called this the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. But they weren't speaking in metaphor. They meant it literally. The structure of the cosmos is echoed in the structure of your mind. The patterns of creation aren't just around you, they're within you. This is where sacred geometry enters not as mysticism, but as the blueprint of everything. The flower of life, the seed of life, the Merkaba. These aren't just pretty symbols you see on yoga mats or tattooed on someone's back. They are vibrational codes, mathematical truths that stabilize consciousness, forms that interact directly with your field. You don't look at sacred geometry, you resonate with it. That's why you can feel something when you see these patterns, even if you don't understand them. It's not your intellect reacting, it's your soul remembering. Thoth, as the keeper of knowledge, embedded these symbols into temples, scrolls, and rituals for a reason. Because geometry bypasses the rational mind. It speaks directly to the subconscious. It reorders the chaos. It aligns you with universal rhythm. In ancient Egypt, temples weren't just places of worship. They were calibration chambers. The very stones vibrated with harmonic ratios. Walking through them wasn't symbolic, it was alchemical. You entered one state and exited another. That's how the ancients manifested, not just through words, but through environmental attunement. Modern society has forgotten this. It treats space as utility. Buildings are square, fluorescent, disconnected. We've replaced resonance with efficiency, and in doing so, we've stepped out of sync with the deeper field. But sacred geometry isn't gone. It's just been buried, hidden in architecture, encoded in art, woven into myths, and most importantly, it still lives inside you. Your breath follows the Fibonacci sequence. Your heartbeat obeys natural rhythm. Even the structure of your thoughts traces patterns that mirror cosmic design. When you begin to surround yourself with sacred forms, visually, mentally, energetically, you begin to re-enter coherence. That's what manifestation really demands: coherence between your structure and the structure of the universe. When your inner world is disordered, your signal to the field is distorted. But when your mind, body, and emotions fall into sacred rhythm, you become a vessel for creation. Not a beggar, not a manipulator, but a mirror. You become a resonator of divine order. This is why certain mantras, mandalas, and movement practices feel so powerful. Not because of belief, but because they align with ancient geometry. They tune you. And when you're tuned, the field responds instantly, not because you forced it, but because you became structurally compatible with what you were calling in. This is why Thoth taught through symbols. Words can lie, symbols cannot. Symbols don't just describe reality, they reveal it. You don't need to master math or become a mystic to use this. You just need to start noticing the patterns in nature, in your emotions, in your thoughts. Pay attention to what repeats, what spirals, what expands and contracts. Because the geometry of your life is not random. It's reflecting the architecture of your consciousness. Every shape you resonate with is a doorway. Every pattern you decode is a step back into alignment. And when you begin to live in rhythm, not in chaos, not in resistance, but in rhythm, you'll see that manifestation isn't a single act. It's a state of flow, a continuous unfolding, a conversation between you and the universe in the language of form. This is the secret the ancients lived by, the one modern culture dismissed as symbolic superstition. But you're here now, remembering. And that memory is not just information, it's activation. It's the first step back into harmony. Because when you align with the geometry of creation, the universe stops resisting you and starts creating through you. There is no true manifestation without awareness. Not the surface kind that floats on the mind like mist, but the deep kind, the piercing kind, the kind that sees through illusion with terrifying clarity. This is where the real journey begins, not when you start asking the universe for more, but when you begin asking yourself why you ever felt separate from it in the first place. Thoth's teachings were not written for the many. They were whispered to the few who could hold paradox in their hearts, who could look at the material world and see the mirage, who could witness their pain and still know they were whole. This is why awareness is the real initiation. It demands the collapse of every false identity you've ever inherited. It's the burning down of the masks, the titles, the stories you clung to just to feel like someone. And when those burn away, what's left is raw, silent, powerful presence. That presence is who you really are. It's what was there before the programming, before they taught you who to be, what to fear, and how to think. You've been conditioned to think awareness is passive, but it's not true. Awareness is active. It's catalytic. It begins to rewrite you the moment it's honest. The moment you stop flinching away from your shadows and start holding them in your gaze without judgment. The ancients knew that manifestation was the fruit, but awareness was the seed. If your field is cluttered with unprocessed emotion, unconscious stories, or inherited trauma, no amount of vision boards will change your life. That clutter vibrates, it broadcasts, and the universe listens. That's why most manifestation fails, not because the method is wrong, but because the signal is scrambled. You can't lie to the field. You can't bypass your own frequency. This is why the path of the initiate was never glamorous. It was initiatory because it stripped you of the illusions you were addicted to. You don't get to keep your comfort and step into power. You don't get to maintain your false self and embody truth. The secret reveals itself in stages, and each stage demands a deeper level of honesty, not with others, but with yourself.